Welcome to A Million Ways to Live. I'm Chris. I'm here as always with my co-host Cassie. We're going to dive into, explore, dissect a million different ways to live a good life. It should be fun. The show and life, they should both be fun. Okay, Cassie,
Hey, Chris.
welcome back.
Thanks.
So this is episode 2 on the topic of deferred happiness, right?
Right?
So last episode we talked about deferred happiness in retirement
Mm-hmm.
and how people often will work a job that is unpleasant to miserable in hopes that someday they'll retire and then they can be happy.
Yes.
Today we're going just deeper on the entire idea of deferred happiness. So let's remind listeners what deferred happiness is. I am going to make you define it this time.
Okay.
Because I did last time.
Putting off happiness until a later date, or believing that you'll be happy when XYZ happens, but not really living for the moment and being present and enjoying the here and now because you're focused on the next thing in the future that will bring you happiness.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly, it's a very literal, it's defined in the term itself, deferred happiness. It's kind of obvious, but people have also dubbed the deferred happiness syndrome, which is not a, it's not a actual
syndrome.
psychological thing. But yeah, delaying happiness, joy until you achieve something, reach some goal, change something about yourself, or
some milestone in life. Yep.
And so, why is it a bad idea?
I think that's obvious because you don't know if that present date will come. You don't know if that milestone will ever happen. You don't know if you'll ever get to that vision of yourself that you're imagining will be happy. So being happy now, or trying to be, is obviously the better route. To me.
Yeah, you may never reach the goal.
Yeah.
So, to put it in context here, I have a few common areas where people defer happiness. So
Okay.
you have career, like we talked about. Well, retirement is really what we talked about. But in career, waiting for a new job, a promotion, or reaching a certain salary level of income. Education, putting off enjoying life until you graduate or get the education you're seeking.
Yeah.
Relationships, people think they can't be happy until they find a partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be. Lifestyle, thinking you can't be happy living where you are or until you move to a new town or get a bigger house or that kind of a lifestyle related milestone. And then just other personal milestones until you're older, until you retire, or any other personal goal.
Lose weight. That's a common one. Yeah.
And so people do this in all of these different areas. The other reason it's a bad idea is that it might not make you happy when you reach it.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people don't know. You don't know that if it's going to make you happy or not. There's no way to know it. You think it is. And a lot of things in our culture tell us that we're going to be happy when you get the big house, become a millionaire, whatever it is.
Yep.
Social media. Who do you think's prone to these kinds of things? Or this kind of thing?
Whoa. I think everyone is a little bit, or, I think everyone is prone to it. I'm definitely guilty of doing it throughout my entire life.
In what areas?
Oh gosh, like all of them. So it was, probably from middle school on, like, oh, I'll be happy when I get to high school. I'll be happy after high school. Oh, if I could just get a job and then, finish college, then I'll be happy. I can get married, have kids. I've done like all of the ones that we've kind of talked about, have a certain amount of money, weigh a certain amount, everything. It's always the next thing. Or if we, even smaller, like sometimes, like, oh, if we can just get through winter, I'll be happy when it's spring. Like, I do it a lot. I think I'm really guilty of this whole thing, and kind of thinking about it over the past week or two has put it in perspective. And, like, logically, I know it's not the way to live life, but I think we all do it to some degree. But who's most susceptible to it? I guess people that are unhappy.
But are they unhappy because they're doing this, or are they
Oh,
doing this because they're unhappy? So I think, so the note I have here is that high achievers, people that are
mm,
highly ambitious, people
okay.
that are always
Striving.
the next project,
Yeah.
the next big thing, the next goal, those people are, I think, prone to getting caught in that trap
Yeah.
of thinking the next thing, or the success of the next project, or the achievement of the next goal is when they'll finally be able to relax and be happy, because
Yeah.
it's more than just this feeling. Some people, I think, like, truly feel like they can't relax, like that it's a work thing. It's like they
Yeah.
have to hustle
Grind.
and grind
Yeah.
to get to the next thing, or get to the end of the current thing
Yeah.
before. And it's almost think they can't, like, this is, well, I know I have to struggle right now. I don't get to be happy
Until.
until I do this thing. It's
Yeah.
not even this, I don't know, it almost becomes a conscious choice. Like,
Hmm.
they recognize that they're deferring happiness and say, well, I know, because I got to hustle and grind and get to the end of this project or reach this goal. And then, like, that's what I think is odd about it. It actually maybe starts as this unconscious thing that just people do,
Hmm.
but for the high achiever, the highly ambitious type of person, I think it actually becomes this choice, whether that comes from all of the hustle and grind type of people, that influencers and such, that those kinds of people follow, or it's more innate. I don't know, but that seems to be it evolves into a choice, I think, for
Yeah.
those kinds of people.
So I would say there's really kind of two kinds of people then. Kind of the ones that you're talking about that have just a lot of ambition and hustle and want to get there. And then on the flip side, people that don't really want to take responsibility for their own happiness, in a way of like saying, once I get to there, then I'll be happy, but not putting it in their own court, like hoping that the universe gives them a partner or a promotion or the next thing, or if I win the lottery, then I'll be happy. There's kind of, I think, that flip side to it.
Are you describing like a victim
Hmm.
mentality of people that say the world is put me in a bad position
Yep.
and I can't be happy until the world takes me out of this position?
Yeah. So kind of interesting to they're such similar things, but one person is trying their hardest to get there while the other person is just waiting for fortune to happen to them.
What do you think that does in a relationship to the other person?
If
So if there's two people in a
mhm,
relationship, there's one person who is has this deferred happiness syndrome,
mhm,
and the other person is a little bit better at being content.
I think it causes a lot of stress in a
Why
relationship
are you smirking?
because I think we have a little bit of that.
I,
Uh, while I said I've gone through, that a little bit of it, I'm much more content, I think, in the day to day than my partner over there. Which, I think there's I think there's a good side to it too. Like someone who's highly ambitious and wants to achieve things and has goals, that's all great. I mean, but the downside is I can't be happy until I do those things. And I think sometimes in a relationship, especially, it's like, well, you got to figure out how to be happy now because here we are.
Yeah, it is great, I think, to have goals and ambition, but
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. That, well, if you have ambition, you have to defer happiness.
Right.
Those two things can be separated, and you can abandon the deferred happiness idea
Hmm.
and still be ambitious.
Definitely. But sometimes people don't do that.
Right. Well, I've got a list of things we'll get to here in a few minutes on ways to do that.
Okay.
Um, but I wanted to bring a couple of resources in. So there's a guy in the idea of where does it come from? Where does
Mm.
this deferred happiness come from? And I found this guy named Clive Hamilton. He's an Australian author. And he wrote about this a long time ago, 2004, which
20 years ago.
is a long time
It
ago.
is a long time.
I saw a thing that said if what's the movie? Dazed and Confused. If they were to make a movie today
Yeah.
about a time long ago,
Yeah.
just like they did in the 90s with Dazed and Confused,
Yeah.
then that would be like the early 2000s or something.
It's crazy.
Anyway, Clive Hamilton is an Australian author, and he wrote that it starts with evolution. Humans are not designed to be happy because then we wouldn't evolve.
Mm.
We're designed to progress and push forward, and to do that, there's a dissatisfaction that often exists.
Makes sense. I mean, to change, why would you change anything if you were totally satisfied? You know? So having that element of dissatisfaction is what drives people to some degree.
So that makes sense, but I've been reading a lot about work lately, and truly a long time ago, hunter-gatherer societies, it was more of an egalitarian society where there wasn't hierarchies, there wasn't this societal need to progress and compare yourself to each other and say, I need to, this person's um, higher status, I want to meet their status. I want to
Mm.
raise my own status and become more important or more prestigious. It wasn't like that
Mm.
originally.
Okay.
I guess he's right. It evolved into that, but I don't know if that is innate in humans
Mm-hmm.
or if that's something that our current culture is making us do. Is it
Hmm.
unnatural or is it natural?
Are you asking my opinion? I think
I'm asking
it's
it out into
nat.
the world. If you have an answer, feel free to.
I, I didn't realize that it hasn't always been that way, frankly. I thought there was always some degree of wanting higher status, higher position in the tribe. Like, you have better chances of getting a partner, like I thought that was something that was kind of
It's not
always a part of life.
there. I'm not completely schooled in that area of anthropology, so
Yeah.
but my understanding is that that is not a universal idea. It's not that all um, small tribes and
Hmm.
hunter-gatherer societies did not all have that hierarchy,
Hmm.
and many didn't. He goes on to say humans navigate the world in relation to where am I in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And then an article talking about his paper. It says, if you think about today and the group that we are in, if you think about today and the group that we are in comparison to, it's Hollywood stars and people who are genetically great in the gym. If we go back not that far, we would have had small tribes and we could be the best at something. Whereas now we are comparing ourselves to people who are the best in the world,
Mhm.
people who are in the 1% of the 1% because we're
Exposed to it.
connected.
Yeah.
Everybody's connected to everybody on the internet. So we can see the best of the best, the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, just the comparison trap that people get themselves into that didn't exist like not that long ago. So has deferred happiness always been such a thing, or is that a more recent phenomena, do you think? Like with the introduction of social media and being able to see what everyone else is doing.
I don't think it started with social media.
No, I'm not saying it start. Do you think it has increased because of?
Oh, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The they call social media people's highlight reel because most people only show the good. They're not posting about all of the bad times or the losses in their life. Most people.
Or normal times.
Or normal boring times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody, if you look at, you've got that one family you always talk about on Instagram that's
Yeah.
always taking amazing vacations. They're
Feels
just
like
always eating great food and traveling, and they always look happy, and their
Yeah.
kids are great, and they're pretty people, and they're just it's the highlight reel of that family.
Yeah.
They surely have bad times too, but they're not posting Instagram pictures of that.
Right.
So that's what most people do, and that's what we see. So it's hard not to think that we don't absorb that subconsciously and become feel inadequate and feel like we need to work harder to achieve things, and it forces us into this trap of not appreciating what we have. So yeah, I think social media has made it 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some statistics on that, but yeah, absolutely. So how might people break the cycle? I've got a list if you would like me to jump in, unless you have some ideas of your own.
No, go right ahead. Yeah.
So I've got 3 categories
Of how to break the cycle.
of how to break the cycle of deferring happiness.
Okay.
So there's some just general ones. There's a few that Clive Gordon, the Australian author, had. And then because we've done some other episodes on topics that I think are helpful, I've got some ideas from Stoicism.
Okay.
All right, so some general ideas. We have what's to be expected to some degree. So mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
So brings you back into the current moment. You have set balanced goals. How to pursue aspirations without sacrificing current happiness. Balanced goals, I think one way to look at that is the idea of setting out a process goal and an outcome goal.
Okay.
An outcome goal is I want to run a marathon. A process goal is I want to run 4 times a week.
Okay.
So that way, even, your body might not let you on marathon day get to the finish line because an injury or you just run out of energy or what have you. So the things that you can't control in that situation might keep you from being happy if you don't set a process goal that you're a little bit more in control of.
Yeah.
Celebrate small victories. So along the path to whatever you're trying to achieve, celebrate the milestones leading up to that.
Okay.
Clive Gordon has 5 ideas. It says, do things that relate to your purpose. People who have a purpose will be happier. Do you have a purpose?
That's a big question. I don't know if I know my exact purpose.
I would bet most people don't have any idea what their purpose is.
Well, okay. Then no, I don't know my purpose.
Do you know my purpose?
No. Do you?
I've always thought it was artistic,
Yeah.
being artistic.
Oh.
I don't know if that's right. I don't know if there is a right answer, but
Yeah.
learn to live in the moment. So kind of back to mindfulness and meditation. Number 4, at the end of the day, look for 2 things you did well and praise yourself genuinely. Learning to look for the good will help you to be happier and build a better relationship with yourself.
I like that one.
Create your own sanctuary time. Create your own sanctuary time in your week where you remove distractions and focus on doing things you really enjoy to nourish you in some way, shape, or form. We will all have our own version of what this will involve. Do you have sanctuary time?
I do not. Nope.
Most of my life is seeking sanctuary time.
I know.
Value sanctuary time.
I know.
I've never called it sanctuary time,
I
but
like the term, though. I think that's nice. Yeah.
so those are Clive Gordon's 5 ideas. Do things that relate to your purpose. Learn to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Learn to live in the moment. Look for, at the end of the day, 2 things you did well and praise yourself genuinely. And then create sanctuary time.
Okay.
Stoicism.
Mm.
Stoicism tells us to focus on what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of back to the process and outcome goals. So a
Yeah.
lot of these are similar ideas packaged a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Stoicism is focus on what you can control and disregard the things you cannot control. There's no use wasting, worrying
energy
over things you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
Live according to nature.
Okay.
So
that would help with being present and right. To me, it does.
Live according to nature.
Yeah.
Be present. I think that those are two different ideas, but they probably relate. So Stoicism, I'll read what it has here.
Okay.
Stoicism teaches living in harmony with nature, including human nature. This involves accepting life as it unfolds and finding contentment in fulfilling your roles and duties well, rather than postponing happiness in anticipation of future achievements or changes. Number 3, practice mindfulness and presence. So that's come up really in all of these different categories. Use negative visualization. Do you remember what negative visualization
I
is?
sure do. That's one of the tricky parts of Stoicism. It's thinking
because
about
it's dark.
Just,
it can be dark, depending on the topic that you're visualizing.
Yeah. I just always immediately go to the worst possible thing when I think of that.
So negative visualization is imagining the worst possible outcome for a scenario. So negative visualization for career.
Yeah.
You know, you get fired and can't find a job in your industry anymore, and you have to start completely over. Maybe that's a visualization. Negative. And the point of it all is if you visualize the worst possible outcome, you'll either find that it's not as bad as you thought, or it will soften the blow if that should happen. So you're preparing for that thing. You're mentally prepared for that to happen. Or a third option, you'll figure out a way to avoid it.
Yeah.
So can be dark because people think about
I always just go to death and
a lot of the examples are around death and losing somebody you care for. And yeah, that's really dark. And I can understand how people don't want to do that.
Right.
But it's supposed to be helpful, even in that area.
Yeah. I can see its value a lot more in the career or physical things.
Losing something like your house or car or something. So Stoicism recommendation number 5 is cultivate self-sufficiency. Stoicism teaches that true happiness comes from within, not from external circumstances or achievement. By developing inner resilience and self-sufficiency, you can enjoy life regardless of external conditions. Appreciation.
Yeah. And that goes back to the author. He said, recognize the 2 things that you did well that day. So similar to that.
Number 6, acceptance. Learn to accept things as they come without resistance or resentment. Number 7, reflect on impermanence. Recognize the temporary nature of life and all its experiences. This recognition helps temper the desire to postpone joy until some future date, highlighting the importance of finding happiness in the now.
I think that's my favorite one. One of my favorites, for sure. I think we could all benefit from that daily, knowing that this is not forever. how things are. And you used to remind me of it a lot. I think when the kids were little, like they will eventually sleep. They will eventually eat on their own. They will get dressed on their own. Like all of the kind of hard
when you're
parts
having
of
a hard
life, like they're
day.
just not going to last. I mean, so nothing is forever. And sometimes that's bittersweet, but sometimes it's also like, yeah, just, today might be terrible because of XYZ, but in a month from now, that likely won't be the situation.
Yeah, somebody on another podcast, no idea when or where, but I remember they said the best parenting advice they ever got was on those days where it is chaos. You're trying to speak with your spouse and you can't because the kids are screaming,
Yeah.
they're crying, they're fighting, they're spilling, they're breaking things, whatever, just the chaos, and you're annoyed, you're frustrated, maybe you're trying to work, maybe you're on the phone, all those times where the tension is just rising and rising and you just want to explode.
Yeah.
Just picture yourself 30 years later
In a quiet house.
in a quiet house and how much you would probably want that moment back
Mm-hmm.
and react in the way that 30-year older version of you would suggest you act.
Yeah.
I thought
It's
that
a
was
good
good.
one. It is.
So another very practical way to avoid deferring happiness.
Yeah. Like
Avoid deferring happiness to when that life is not so chaotic.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. So have I missed anything that you came across?
No, as I was trying to kind of like listen or read, I kept coming across meditation, mindfulness. That was like a big thing, just, working on being present.
Mm-hmm.
I liked kind of the term, the when then trap. I think that's a good way to,
What's that?
when this happens, then I'll
Oh.
have this outcome. So I think kind of thinking not to fall into that trap of thinking when this happens, then,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that I'll take away from it kind of and use.
Well, two last things I have here. So, or really one, I guess. So I think what we're going to find after we do this podcast for another year, another 2 years, another 10 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That there's going to develop what I'll dub right now this tool belt approach to living a good life.
Okay.
Because sometimes minimalism is going to be useful, like when clutter is getting out of control.
Yeah.
Very obvious. But other times, some stoic ideas are going to be helpful. Other times, you just need a guide, somebody to kind of redirect you back into the right direction. So that, we did the, finding a guru idea episode. And I think all of these different approaches, while it's hard to say that one of them is ever going to be like, that's the way to live life. But having all of these different things to pull out of your tool belt will be useful. Being able to pull one idea, negative visualization, out of stoicism and use that when you're deferring happiness too much or worrying about the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it. I always feel like a few things stick with me each time, each topic, and I'm like, that's really, really useful. While none of them are the silver bullet, like you said, of this is definitely the right way, there's a lot of good elements that come from each of the topics we've discussed so far.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All
Thanks.
right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. And please tune in next week for another edition of A Million Ways to Live. Bye-bye.